Welcome. Welcome to the year 2022 Chief Executive Election Question and Answer Session. I am Chan Kai-yen from TVB and I'm Poon Chi-him from Commercial Radio Hong Kong. And we welcome the Chief Executive candidate, Mr. John Lee. Hello everyone. Hello fellow citizens. So today's Q&A session is hosted by 7 different media groups including TVB News, RTHK Newsroom, Phoenix TV Hong Kong, the Metro Radio News Department, and Now TV, Cable TV, and also Commercial Radio Hong Kong Newsroom. So the Chief Executive will influence Hong Kong's development for the next 5 years to come. And through this Q&A session, we hope that our citizens will better understand the candidate's ideas. Because of the pandemic, there is no live audience here tonight with us, but we asked Data Analytics and Survey Research Center of the Hong Kong Shu Yan University to select 90 citizens by random to pose their questions to the candidate. And in the end, we have 30 questions recorded from our citizens. So tonight is divided into 3 themes, including housing, land, and economy, fighting the pandemic, livelihood, medicine, and livelihoods, and finally, politics and mainland relations. There are questions from the citizens and from media. So in the first segment, we would have 3 questions from 3 random citizens. So number 1 is Mr. Wan from Yau Tsim Mong District. So the second citizen. The second is Madam Ng from Wong Tai Sin District. And the third questions come from Mr. Yip of Sai Kung District. So let us enter theme number 1, housing, land, and economy. So a lot of Hong Kong people say that living in Hong Kong, we have very small space for a very expensive amount of, and last year, about 226.3 thousand people live in 110,000 subdivided units, and you have to line up for public housing from 6 years. There's a high unemployment rate because of the pandemic. The unemployment rate is expected to be 5%, and this year we expect our GDP growth to range from 2 to 3.5%. And we can now listen to the citizens' questions. So over the past few years, we often hear in Hong Kong, how could we surpass Shanghai, Shenzhen, Beijing, and Singapore? And recently, a lot of talents have left Hong Kong. Mr. John Lee, after you become the chief executive, what measures do you have to retain talent? Mr. John Lee, if you get elected, how could you help us get on the housing ladder? Can you solve our problems? It's your problem and your decision to decide how to solve this problem, and this is your responsibility. So land and housing development is the key to Hong Kong's economy, but we are often influenced by our population policies. Does Mr. Lee have a long-term plan to attract overseas talent to move to Hong Kong, to increase the vibrancy of our economy, and to solve the loss of population problem that have plagued us recently? So we now invite Mr. John Lee to respond. Thank you for your questions, fellow citizens, including getting on the housing ladder, and in Hong Kong, the talent problems that we face, and our population policy. I have stated this clearly in my manifesto. In terms of housing, I want to accelerate the speed, enhance the efficiency, and enhance the number, so that there would be more housing supplied onto the market. This is one thing that I have stressed in my manifesto. Therefore, I will set up 2 groups. The first is the Public Housing Action Team. It's a team that takes action and, as quickly as possible, accelerate the efficiency and speed of the housing process. And secondly, I will set up another steering committee at a chief secretary level to accelerate the entire process of building and supplying land for public housing. So both groups will be led by the chief secretary or the financial secretary. So the purpose being, I want to accelerate it and enhance in both terms of quantity and efficiency. With regards to talents, I understand. When it comes to the pandemic, sometimes the way we control our borders means that we are less flexible than before. But we know that we have to strike a balance when we fight the pandemic. So the current administration has already relaxed some of the anti-pandemic measures in phases, and we can see that the economy is picking back up. Society is on the move again. So on that front, I think that we have to do more. We have to strengthen consumption in society. Consumption will drive a lot of social activity, and we have to increase the amount of investments. So in terms of investments, including what I've said, we have a lot of infrastructure plans or public housing plans, and all that would drive economic activity. But more importantly, we must enhance Hong Kong's competitiveness, because if Hong Kong is competitive, then we will attract various types of people to Hong Kong. Different enterprises will set up their headquarters in Hong Kong. We have a lot of competitive advantages in Hong Kong, and in my manifesto, I have mentioned many measures to enhance our competitiveness, including consolidating our existing advantages, enhancing them, and moving on to new areas. For example, I've said that I want to build Hong Kong into a cultural capital. And in terms of innovative technology, we want to build Hong Kong into an international innovative technological center. If we enhance our competitiveness, the talents will come. And with the motherland behind our backs, our talents, our capital, and the future industrial chain will inject new amount of talents and new vibrancy and new life to Hong Kong's economy. Thank you. Understood. Now we have questions from the media. So all questions are from the 7 media groups. And first, we have Madam Wong Ming-Hei from the RTHK.
Mr. Lee, you talked about advancing the timeline for people moving to public housing. We have also heard a question from a citizen. Many people have moved into some housing units, but there are no wet markets and no transportation support. So without such supporting facilities, if you ask people to move into such units, do you think it is actually practical? Thank you for the question. When I communicate with grassroots families, I truly feel that they want to be housed as quickly as possible. And I have also looked into the situation that if they want to enhance the living surrounding environment, to be housed sooner, they should be given such an option. At the end of the day, it is up to them to decide if they want to take the opportunity or not. This is an advancement plan. It is rather different from other housing units with all the supporting facilities ready. When I communicate with different families, I have raised the issue. Are you going to choose something that is a bit less convenient without transportation support? I've talked to different sectors. Some have told me it is less convenient when I need to buy food, but the environment is better. I'm watching TV and my son can study in his own corner. So it is about giving them the option. Everyone's needs are different. Some people may say, I prefer convenience. I will forgo the option. But I am offering the option to them. How many projects can be covered by this plan? We have to review it. That's why I expect the task force to focus on this. They have to review this plan to house people more quickly and also examine any possible options so that we can enhance the speed, efficiency, and quantity. Next, we have Mr. Wong Tik-wai from Phoenix TV Hong Kong. The current waiting time on average is 6 years for public housing. According to an international survey, Hong Kong people will have to forgo food and drinks for 23 years so as to be housed. What measures do you have to facilitate Hong Kong people to be housed more quickly? Are you going to review the vacancy tax? We need to maintain stability of property prices. I don't want to see any major fluctuations. So concerning this position, the government needs to tell people clearly, stable property price is the most suitable to Hong Kong. And under such situation, when we develop our economy, there will be more employment opportunities, more value-adding elements. People can earn more with stable property prices. We have better income. we can afford more. That is one of our directions for administration ideas. Secondly, I'm talking about enhancing the speed, efficiency, and quantity. It is about public housing supply and also supply in the private sector. For the private sector, we can be more flexible. We can use more efforts from developers, for example. How do we speed up construction of the housing units? And we need to streamline the procedures. We should not have very complicated procedures. Some procedures were fixed in the past. Perhaps they are already outdated. We can compress them. Let's not duplicate anything. Or some procedures in the past, you have to do one first and then the other ones to follow. Perhaps we can do them in parallel. So I talked about this task force on public housing project. They focus on taking real action. After the 6th administration takes its term and takes its office, within 100 days, they have to make true proposal so that we can truly enhance the speed, efficiency, and quantity. Next is Ms. Conway Yan from Metro Radio. Mr. Lee, let's change the topic. We are an international financial center, but in the past, you haven't really touched upon such topics. If you are elected, how do you feel confident that we can protect our position as an international financial center? And Mrs. Lam talked about 3 supporting pillars. What are your pillars? Well, my idea is about relying on a team. One person can only do so much. I deeply believe that every person has their strengths and weaknesses. But if I'm able to put together a team that is well united and determined, then it's like a symphony. We have someone playing the flute, someone playing the violin, someone playing the drums. Everyone is unleashing their potential, and I am the conductor. Only a good team can create more value. 1 + 1 will be greater than 2. As for the International Financial Center, you can see in my manifesto, I have raised 8 policy objectives. If you go through them carefully, I have put them together after collecting views from different walks of life. If you follow these 8 directives, there are plenty of opportunities. Now we have the 14th five-year plan and also the Greater Bay Area Development Plan. We are expanding our horizon. So when it comes to financial matters, that is our existing strength, and we can expand it and enhance it. I'm very optimistic. I have one follow-up question. 2 citizens are quite concerned about people moving away. We're losing many talents, and you talked about some lack of flexibility in terms of pandemic control measures. You talked about enhancing our competitiveness to attract people to come here. Do you think migration issue is really about pandemic control measures? Any other reasons? You talked about attracting different people to come to Hong Kong. So you want to attract new people to come. What about those planning to leave? What would you like to say to them to keep them here? We have always had liquidity of talents based on people's own needs and considerations. They will move around, and it is very normal. Every time and again, we have proven to everyone we are competitive. And you can come here to seek your own development, and you can succeed. According to my manifesto and administrative ideas, I've talked about how we turn Hong Kong into a more inclusive and vibrant city. We are well connected to the rest of the world. That is our strength. When I presented my manifesto, I talked about the same point. We are an international city, well connected to the rest of the world. We're very attractive. That is very well proven. We also have support from our motherland. So our market, our talents, and the capital, that is very comprehensive. We are truly blessed. So we need to leverage on our advantages and enhance attractiveness. When we talk about talents, it's about opportunities and development. People will follow these things. I already explained that we are very strong because we are well connected to the rest of the world and also with our motherland. And our motherland is going to be the engine for growth in the future. So for those leaving or coming to Hong Kong, well, we are very diverse and inclusive. We are vibrant and hopeful. Hong Kong will offer opportunities to every single person to realize their dream. That is very attractive. We have endless opportunities. I, the 6th administration, want to bring to you a government that is going to focus on execution and results. No matter what happens, my administration will give you the results to show you we are attractive. We present great development opportunities. Whoever you are, just look at such results. You will know Hong Kong is the place to be.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Lee. So after hearing from the candidate about housing, land, and economics, during the next segment, we will talk about fighting the pandemic, medicine, and livelihoods. Welcome back to the year 2022 Chief Executive Election Q&A session. So here we're going to talk about fighting the pandemic, livelihood, medicine, and education. So it's a similar arrangement as before. Apart from some pre-recorded clips from our citizens, we also have media representatives posing questions. So first, let me select 3 citizens by random. So number 1 is Mr. Choi from Tin Shui Wai. Number 2 is Madam Choi from Sha Tin. And the final one is Madam Lun from Tai Po. So let me offer some background on this segment. So during the 5th wave of the pandemic, Hong Kong has suffered a lot. Over 1.19 million people was infected. Over 9,000 people died. A lot of institutions could not operate normally. A lot of people's livelihoods have been hurt. And the year before last, in year 2020, there was already 1.65 million people in Hong Kong who are under the poverty line. The poverty rate is 23.6%. It's the highest in recent times. So in face of all these difficulties, what would our citizens want to ask Mr. John Lee? So the Tuen Mun Expressway has exceeded 100% capacity already, and there would be 16,000 more flats in the Hung Shui Kiu district later on. So could the government build enough infrastructure to cater to our needs? So I was thinking that the pandemic in Hong Kong, after the pandemic has subsided, when could we open up our borders? And after Hong Kong has stabilized, if people come out to riot, to cause trouble, well, I wonder how will the government deal with that? So because of the pandemic, all education and higher education institutions have to start their classes by virtual means. But for kindergarten parents in the low-income group, they may not be able to afford the relevant equipment like rapid antigen tests, and because you have to use it every day. So I wonder, how could the government help these low-income families to make sure they could afford all this online equipment or anti-pandemic equipment? So, Mr. John Lee, please. Thank you. Thank you for your questions. So in my manifesto, one of the points that I've stressed when it comes to providing land and housing to solve the citizens' housing problems, we have to start with infrastructure. And I emphasize 2 points. Firstly, I would vet all of the announced infrastructure projects to see in terms of timeline, or in terms of working together, how could we work to do that? Because infrastructure would drive a lot of things and it would bring forth a lot of conveniences. And furthermore, in terms of our infrastructure design, because we no longer have just Hong Kong as development, we could develop in the Big Bay Area, Greater Bay Area, and in Shenzhen. So our infrastructure has to be aligned with Shenzhen as well. And I know everybody cares a lot about opening up our borders. And amongst our grassroots families, how could we provide them with more support for their children, for their children's education, etc.? Firstly, if I get elected, I would deal with the possibility of opening up the borders. And in various places, I've already said, I would, as soon as possible, talk to relevant mainland authorities about opening our borders and what the conditions and prerequisites may be. And I will try to remove all obstacles which stops us from opening up our borders, and we will try to create the right conditions for opening up borders. For example, I want to ramp up vaccination efforts, and right now, our vaccination rates for the second dose of the vaccine is not yet 90%. We could do more. And for elderly people and for people aged 12 and below, we must vaccinate them more and to incentivize them to get vaccinated. And we could do better risk assessments so that we do not have to adopt a one-size-fits-all policy for all industries. I think we should analyze the risk profiles, high risk, medium risk, and low risk industries. We should have different measures so that when it comes to fighting the pandemic and balancing the regular economic activity of our society, we could do better. And these are all things which would help us remove the obstacles stopping us from opening our borders, and I care about that. And furthermore, if any families are in need, firstly, the Social Welfare Department have various schemes which could help them. And I've also proposed that I want to alleviate intergenerational poverty. With regards to secondary school students, I proposed a 1,000-student plan to design a scheme to enhance their competitiveness. So no matter what age group you're in as a student, we have various schemes to support you, and I will actively think about those schemes as well. So now we have a question from Now TV Chan Ho Wai. So Mr. Lee, you mentioned that after you get elected, you would talk mainland authorities about opening up our borders. But right now, the pandemic is ravaging China, and many nations are opening up, and they're prepared to open up their borders with us. So I want to ask about a point of principle. Must we open up our borders with the mainland first before opening up our borders with other nations? Thank you, Ho Wai. We have to be pragmatic about looking at anti-pandemic controls. The fifth wave of the pandemic, as we all know, is an imported the cases were imported. So how could we balance fighting the pandemic and our daily activity, including traveling overseas or letting people from the overseas to arrive at Hong Kong? This is something that we have to take a pragmatic look at. And that's the first point. And secondly, when it comes to opening our borders with mainland and opening up our borders with the world out there, the two are not necessarily in conflict, because we have to talk to the mainland first. What must the prerequisite be if we want to open up the borders with the mainland? After we have sought solutions and we remove the obstacles, perhaps we could gradually open up our borders. Last time, after discussions, perhaps we could start with a small scope and then gradually expand the scope. I think these are all pragmatic things that we could do, reflecting the true situation with Hong Kong, and there would be possibilities there. But of course, naturally, there would be challenges as well. Furthermore, for foreign nationals coming to Hong Kong, passing by our airport, of course, we understand that we prevent importing new cases. And importing cases would cause the pandemic to be transmitted throughout our community, and that's what happened in the fifth wave. So we must balance the needs of fighting the pandemic. And we have seen that the current administration is gradually and pragmatically, for example, they have shortened the quarantine period already. So I think after we balance all the needs, we could, in various processes, try to design different control measures based on the actual situation. So next, we have Leung Ka-po from cable TV. So, Mr. Lee, you've mentioned the 1,000-student plan, but right now, there are 61,000 plus students in Hong Kong. Is the 1,000 people too few? And right now, there is a similar case for many social welfare funds for children as well. So, why don't you make this 1,000-student plan a regular plan and to expand the scope of that plan to help more young people? Thank you for your question. And other people have asked this question to me as well. This is an idea that I propose. The important thing is the idea. Of course, the plan that I propose now, I welcome other people to give me opinions on that. I agree that when it comes to helping our young people grow, there are many plans, many similar plans. But this time, I am targeting students who live in junior high school students, junior secondary school students who live in subdivided units. Because I think that if we try to help them solve the problem of intergenerational poverty, if we want to do that, we must first set a target audience, and then we could do better. Of course, I could not preclude the possibility that in the future we could merge those plans. We merge our regular schemes with the scheme that I propose to help these students living in subdivided units. That's not a possibility that I've eliminated. But what's most important is that I want people to focus. I want people to focus on the group of students who are obviously worthy of our help, these junior secondary school students. And furthermore, if this plan is a success, we could find more people to help. Because we know that the government has to be fiscally responsible. We have to do what we have to do, and we have to spend the necessary amount, but we want to be maximally efficient in terms of our schemes. It would be better than and furthermore, it would be better than working blindly. And furthermore, I emphasize that in my governance, I emphasize collaborative problem solving. And I hope that enterprises, various groups in society, particularly NGOs, they could jointly find a solution, a workable solution, which would achieve results. And the most important thing about this scheme is that I hope that we could review its results every year and set new targets. I'm just throwing my ideas out there, and I welcome all opinions from all facets of society. And if I'm elected, I will work with my team and work with various departments and hammer out the details. Next, we have Wong Ming-Hei from RTHK. So, Mr. Lee, you mentioned that you want to help young people realize their dreams. But we know a lot of young people, their dreams include pursuing democracy, freedom, and justice. These are core values of the world. And let us look at Instagram that young people often use. You only have 2,000 followers on Instagram. The anti-extradition bill events means that a lot of young people have negative perceptions on you and the government. After you get elected, how will you mend your relationship with them? Hong Kong cares about democracy, freedom, and justice. We are a rule of law society. Rule of law matters in Hong Kong. We promote and we adhere to the spirit of the rule of law. So I emphasize that all people have to obey the law. This is a very fundamental idea behind the rule of law. So people out there would have their own ideas on certain matters. They may not have the same way, they may look the same way on some issues as other people do. So it's normal. People have different ideas. They have different ideas. That's normal for all societies, all nations, and all regions. So when there's a difference of opinion, I think the most important thing is, firstly, we must adhere to the laws of Hong Kong when we express our opinions. We could handle these problems in a harmonious manner, allowing room for differences while trying to unify people's views. Of course, people have different views, yes, but after government's hard work, and they see, the government, they really care about our citizens, and there's a little bit of progress made this time, and the next time we make a little bit more progress, we would have an increasingly we have more and more common ground. I think if people have already borne the responsibility for their own actions, the society and our government will definitely try to be inclusive when we treat them. And of course, I will try to accept all these people. I see there are various groups, including NGOs and educational groups, that are doing work in this regard. But I emphasize one point. We would use action to convince people. Differences exist, but they could be solved. We do not need to use illegal means or means which violate the consensus of our society, like mutual respect, to solve our problems. I think in the 6th administration, I want to use my actions to gain trust from society. So step by step, I hope that we would change how people perceive us. Thank you. So that's all the time we have for this segment. Next, we will talk about politics and mainland relations.
Welcome back to the final session of 2022 Chief Executive Election Forum, and we will talk about politics and relationship with the mainland. We will draw 3 citizens to raise their questions. Let's have the first one. From Yau Chim Mong area, Madam Tang. The second one. From Eastern District, Mr. Tang. The third one. From Sha Tin, Madam Chu. Since the reunification in 2019, we have seen a big hurdle in relation to the national security law and also attempts to perfect the election system. And we have stepped up the ratio between different sectors represented in Legislative Council. So with ever-changing environment in relation to politics, what do people have in mind to ask the administration? The community is torn and people are losing confidence in Hong Kong and they decide to move away. How are you going to stabilize the flow of talents or attract people to come back? In recent years, many people have moved to other countries. We've lost many talents. Are they losing confidence in the SAR government? What are the measures to tackle this problem? It's been 25 years since the reunification, so I would like to ask, when it comes to statutory leases and contracts, how come they're still in English? Why can't you use Chinese? Mr. John Lee? Thank you for your questions. First of all, I want to respond to the question about documents. According to the basic law, both Chinese and English are our official languages. So Hong Kong as an international city, it is a good thing to have things in both languages. Just now, people have talked about what they feel about Hong Kong since 2019, how people from the mainland and other countries look at Hong Kong, and how do we inject more confidence into the people. That is what we need to strive for. First of all, we uphold the rule of law. We uphold such spirit. This is the cornerstone. And that is why in my manifesto I have said that we must be a good goalkeeper. The rule of law will safeguard people's freedom and rights and our right to pursue our dreams, to realize our dreams. Everyone will be protected. The rule of law can also stabilize the society because we have the greatest room for freedom as long as it is legal. But when it comes to awareness, to abide by the law, and absolute freedom permitted by the law, we need to pay attention to some people who claim to exercise their freedom, but they are deceiving people. In the past, we have seen some organizations raising money to launch some campaign. They actually are doing money laundering. They are cheating people of their money. The most important thing is we need to understand what are the strengths of Hong Kong, and then we can draw people back because we are attractive. In my manifesto, I have said a lot about enhancing our competitiveness, how to offer opportunities to everyone. We have our existing position as 4 major centers: innovation and technology, capital of culture, so on and so forth. All these are opportunities. Hong Kong will be better. People will be able to see the results, and then they will be attracted to come back. We need to work together so that we can tell clearly Hong Kong's story. We should not allow anyone to use political means to cover up or overshadow what's really happening. That is why I have the title, Open a New Chapter for Hong Kong Together. Let's tell the right story to the rest of the world. Now we will ask a question from Mr. Wong from Phoenix TV. With the launch of the national security law, do you think we can revisit universal suffrage and political reform? Political reform is not going to be a priority item for the 6th administration because we have many other things to do in relation to development, people's livelihood, enhancing our competitiveness so that we can enhance our attractiveness to talents from all over the world. Secondly, we have perfected the election system, and afterwards, we have perfected the process, but we have not yet perfected the results.
Because the current CE election is only the last election after the perfection of the CE election system. We have completed the process, but the opportunities that it could bring, including good governance, sound governance, including how the HEISO government could enhance our governance with the LegCo so that everybody feels that under the current system, we could bring forth a lot of results for Hong Kong. So we must go through an implementation phase. And I also think that this is what the 6th administration wants to work on, and the LegCo has to work on this very hard. So after the improvement of the election system, what results should there be? So this is what we're trying to achieve right now. Political reform, election reform is not a priority for the 6th administration. So next we have the Metro Radio. So even though the basic law protects freedom of press, but as a matter of fact, a lot of members of the media decide to switch jobs or leave Hong Kong. So what practical measures do you have to make people feel that freedom of press is protected? And would you enhance your communication efforts with various media groups? Freedom of press in Hong Kong have existed and is owned by all Hong Kong people. This is just like a Hong Kong identity card. It's already in my pocket. Of course, Hong Kong people will have the Hong Kong ID and foreigners would have foreign ID. Hong Kong already has freedom of press. But we must be careful. Some people would use freedom of press as a disguise and secretly do illegal activities with political aims. And in the future, we will see such cases in court. So Hong Kong does have freedom of press. We have that. So in news, how could we maximize the room we have? Of course, if members of the media, if they feel that they as professionals would gain trust and respect from our citizens, and their passions and their professionalisms would be reflected in their social stature and their income, etc. Of course, this is something that these professionals can choose. But I emphasize that Hong Kong already has the freedom of press. It's in our pockets. You have to see that clearly. In the past, some people pretend that they are journalists, but they actually serve political ends. This contaminates freedom of press. We have to be careful about that. And the government has a responsibility as well. So if there are things that needs rectifying, the government should have the courage to take the lead and tell people that this needs rectifying. Of course, I have much respect for journalists. I thank you for their hard work. Because there are news reports, there can be transparency so that the government could do even better. And I talk to my friends in the media. As I've said, I have dedicated a lot of efforts to establish communicative channels with you, and after I get elected, I will continue those efforts. Thank you. So next is Now TV. So Mr. Lee, in your manifesto, you've said that you will establish an 18-district love and service, care and service team, and you would use these measures to facilitate your policies. But when it comes to the district council, you did not mention it. Do you plan to use these groups to replace the district council? Firstly, the district council, the future of the district council, indeed, that's something that the 6th administration have to deal with. I don't have a stance on that yet. I have an open mind. But of course, firstly, I would have consultation and communications. I'll try to learn more about the issue before I decide the future. But the proposal that I proposed of establishing an effective service across the 18 districts of Hong Kong and an emergency network, why am I doing that? It's consistent with my government philosophy. I am not just working alone as a government. The government takes the lead, yes, but most importantly, throughout the community, we must work together and collaborate on all matters which we deem worth collaborating. I hope to establish a direct channel to connect with the community, and this is not in conflict with any of the existing systems. So if the government could form a close connection with the community, that's definitely good, because the locals understand best what local issues are there. And when we have to do something, these locals could be very helpful. And I want to emphasize that we have one team for each 18 districts. This is about certainty, including the number of people we could leverage is certain, and we know who the people they are, what are their capabilities, and we could minimize the amount of time required. I believe that with our joint efforts all throughout the 18 districts, we could solve these problems, particularly during the pandemic. I have seen that the power from the all 18 districts is very effective. Next, we have a question from cable TV. Mr. Lee, do you think that the current administration is detached from the citizens? Would you work on that? And furthermore, when you are trying to seek talents, how do you avoid the perception of nepotism? So firstly, I have to clearly state this. Do not use negative labels to target constructive efforts. In the past, well, I think that we should have started earlier to tell society what slogans are malicious, and the government has a role to lead the social consciousness to tell people what the truth is. And anyone who wants to join the government, they should start from an honest starting point. They should want to contribute to society. Of course, whenever I choose anybody to join the government or join the teams or join the relevant NGOs or consultative group, I adopt a meritocratic approach. And I want to see if he or she is truly passionate about serving society. That's very important. And as for the future restructuring of the government and at a chief executive office level, what more support could I offer? I have mentioned that in my manifesto. But when it comes to the details, I believe I would talk about this with the current administration before I make an announcement. So, Mr. John Lee, I have a question for you as well. Over the past 2 years, a lot of Hong Kong people have immigrated elsewhere. So, during today's broadcast, a lot of people, apart from people in Hong Kong, a lot of people who have left Hong Kong are also watching this broadcast. As the future leader of Hong Kong, you're most likely going to get elected. What do you want to say to them? Hong Kong is a hopeful place. It's a place where your dreams can come true. No matter when it is, no matter what ideas you have, I understand that. But the most important thing is, after all, Hong Kong is our home. In the past, we have experienced many things. People have left, people came back. But after all, Hong Kong's attractiveness and its inherent value is apparent to everyone. I hope I could form a government which actually achieve results, which could do things. And you will be able to see these fruits of my labor, of our government labor, very soon. And the result would be that everyone could fulfill their dreams. It would be a Hong Kong where people could develop in. It would be a free Hong Kong. This Hong Kong is something that you deserve, and you should embrace such a Hong Kong, and you should feel the need and want to come back to Hong Kong to be part of that Hong Kong. Thank you, Mr. John Lee. So that's all the time we have tonight. I'd like to thank the Chief Executive Candidate, Mr. John Lee, and I'll thank all media groups for participating. And I'd also like to thank TVB for helping us produce this show. And furthermore, I'd like to thank all our citizens on the television or listening on radio. I hope that with this opportunity, you could better understand the candidate and understand what everyone's thinking. Goodbye.
好啊，辛苦大家嚇，多謝晒你哋，辛苦大家，辛苦大家，辛苦晒，辛苦晒，好，好。